All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're talking about something huge, what it really means to understand something. I mean, going way beyond just cramming facts for a test. We're talking about a deeper, more powerful kind of learning.
So, does this sound familiar? Your brain feels like, I don't know, a bus station for facts? Information comes in, stays just long enough for the test, and then poof, it's gone. It's like it vanishes into thin air. Well, there's a really good reason this happens, and we're going to unpack exactly what that is. It really all boils down to two totally different ways of learning. You've got rote memorization on one hand, just repeating stuff over and over until it's burned into your short-term memory. But then, on the other hand, there's conceptual understanding, and that's all about getting the how and the why behind the facts. They might look a little similar on the surface, but trust me, the results couldn't be more different.
Look, rote memorization can be useful, right? It'll probably get you a passing grade on a simple quiz. But the second you face a real-world problem, something messy and unpredictable that isn't in the textbook, that's when this whole approach just falls apart. It completely crumbles, and that's its big weakness. That's why we need something better.
All right, so let's check out our first case file. We're going to dive into a subject that, let's be honest, a lot of us have had some trouble with: math. And we're going to see this difference between principles and procedures in action.
Okay, so let's meet Alex. You can think of him as the king of flashcards. He's a pro at memorizing. So for a problem like x plus 3 equals 5, he hasn't learned the concept, he's just memorized a trick. Move the 3 to the other side and flip the sign. And hey, it works. He gets x equals 2, he's feeling pretty confident like he's totally got this math thing figured out. But then, a new problem shows up. 4x equals 16. And his trick doesn't apply. He kind of panics, tries to do the same thing, move the 4 over and make it negative. He ends up with x equals 12, which is, not even close. His memorized rule was just a one-trick pony. It was brittle, and it broke the second the situation changed. Now let's look at his friend Maya. She sees the same problem, but her brain is doing something completely different. She's not hunting for a trick. She sees the underlying structure. For her, an equation isn't a magic spell, it's a balance scale. Everything has to stay equal. So what's her move? Well, she knows the golden rule. Whatever you do to one side of the scale, you have to do to the other to keep it balanced. Simple as that. She wants to get x all by itself, right? So she has to undo that times 4. The opposite of multiplying is dividing. So she divides both sides by 4, and boom, she gets the right answer. X equals 4. No tricks, just logic. And this is the big takeaway from our math toolkit. Because Maya understood the why, the principle of equality, she could solve any problem like this. Alex only knew a single how, a memorized procedure, and it left him completely stuck. That why gives you flexibility and power that just memorizing the how never will. Okay, let's move on to case file number 2. This one is all about how to take a boring, abstract number and make it, well, real. And this story is a classic. It comes from the childhood of the brilliant physicist Richard Feynman. So picture this. A young Richard Feynman is reading an encyclopedia, and he comes across a fact. A dinosaur was 25 feet tall. Okay, it's just a number, right? 25 feet. Easy enough to memorize for a test. But his dad stops him, and he asks a really simple but profound question. What does that actually mean? He was pushing his son to go beyond just spitting back the number. He wanted him to feel it, to really grasp what that scale looks like in the real world. And this is where the magic happens. His dad says, imagine that dinosaur is standing right there, in our front yard. At 25 feet, he'd be tall enough to stick his head right through that second-story window. And just like that, 25 feet isn't a boring number anymore. It's a picture. It's a feeling. It's real. And he didn't even stop there. He added another detail. He said, and its head is 6 feet wide, so when he puts his head through the window, he's going to break the window frame on both sides. Now that abstract number is a vivid, dynamic, frame-shattering picture in Richard's mind. And the lesson here is just so powerful. Real, deep understanding happens when you can translate abstract facts into something you can see and feel. Feynman himself said there's a huge difference between knowing the name of something and actually knowing the thing. All right, for our last case file, we're going into a really high-stakes environment, medical school.
This is a place where having a deep, conceptual understanding isn't just about getting a good grade. It can literally be a matter of life and death. So you can think of the old way of teaching medicine as a lot of lectures. Students sit, they listen, they take notes, they memorize definitions for a test. But a newer method, called case-based learning, or CBL, just totally flips that on its head. Instead of lectures, students are put in teams and given a real patient story, a mystery they have to solve together. And as these teams worked through the medical puzzles, they had this huge realization. It wasn't just about following the steps in the textbook. That wasn't enough. They realized they had forgotten about the patient's feelings. They had to remember they were treating a whole person, not just a list of symptoms.
And the proof is in the pudding, right? Look at the test scores. The students in the case-based learning groups consistently scored higher than the students who just sat through lectures. It's not even close. The active, hands-on approach created knowledge that was deeper and, more importantly, that they could actually use. So why was it so much better? Well, think about it. The CBL groups didn't just cover a topic, like checking a box. They had to uncover it, piece by piece. They weren't just building knowledge, they were building skill. And maybe most importantly, they learned the attitude, the empathy that you need to apply that knowledge in the real world with real people. So we've seen it in math, we've seen it with a physicist, and we've seen it in medicine. Now let's pull all these threads together. Let's build a simple framework you can actually use to supercharge your own learning. It really comes down to these 3 keys to unlock that deeper understanding. First, always look for the why. Find the underlying principle. That's the balance scale. Don't just settle for the trick. Second, make it real. Translate the abstract into something concrete. Picture that dinosaur in the yard. And third, remember the human element. Apply what you know with empathy and context. Remember the patient's story. And so that leaves us with one final thought. A question for you to take with you. Think of one thing, just one thing, that you've only memorized. Maybe it's a formula from school, a historical date, a definition. Now, how could you use these 3 keys to transform it? How could you turn it from just a fact you can repeat into an idea you truly, deeply understand?